wonderful world of carbon taxes and carbon credits. There's a confusion there, and before I explain the global economics of carbon credit and carbon tax, I want to reassure you, I will sound like I have no faith in them, but I assure you they are necessary and they're extremely important in the formula of progressing. However, hearing carbon credit and carbon tax gave us the idea that everything was resolved, and it's fine. It's not. The global economics goes that way. Of all the countries who have signed, 154 countries, whatever, have signed at some point that it's extremely important. There's the Paris Accord for climate change. There are agreements in different countries where people just go and sign papers and then say we have to do something. However, the reality is that only 27 countries in the world have a carbon tax. So there's no incentive, including the United States of America, they don't have a carbon tax, meaning that there's no incentive for anyone who is producing carbon in any other country to even financially invest or try to find a solution to their own carbon equivalent emissions. So the idea of a carbon tax is wonderful, but only a part of the world actually has a carbon tax. Lucky for us, it's some of the most industrialized countries, but not all of them. The carbon credit is when an industry, a farm, a land, a mine, there's many options where one business can demonstrate that they're capturing carbon, that they emit less than they capture, and they have an excess of credits in terms of carbon. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to validate those. Every country has their own system, their own laws and rules on how to do it. There's no more fraud, as I know. It's pretty much it's well cared for. It's validated. It's a good thing now. We have control over it. Okay, so no one's faking carbon credits like 10 years before. Now we really capture carbon, and it's a way that is very strictly monitored. These carbon credits, when they are sold, they're sold on a stock market of carbon credit. Okay, so let's say in Europe right now, there's a carbon stock market where the carbon credit is about 60 euros per carbon credit per ton. Okay, but let's say in Spain, the tax per ton is 15 euros. So an industry in Spain, are they tempted to pay 10 euros to the country or 60 euros to buy a credit? I think they don't buy the credit. They pay to the country. And then the country will use that money partially for environmental systems, partially for anything else that people vote for. People ask them for education, healthcare system, security, all kinds of things that jobs, people want more things from the government than climate change resolution. Okay. So the government really can't act on this. So these industries that have a carbon tax that is a certain price and a way lower, these countries that have a carbon credit that's at a high price and a much lower carbon tax, they're going to pay the tax. If it costs between 600 and 1,000 euros to properly capture, process, and sequester a ton of CO2. Okay. With 15 euro a ton, you think the government of Spain can do something about that? No. In Canada, 34 Canadian dollars, so maybe 20 euros. In Paris, non-Paris, in France, the whole of France, is a bit higher, in the 20s or 30 euros, but still the carbon credit is more expensive. There are currently, to my knowledge, 3 countries with a carbon tax that is higher than the carbon credits. And these 3 countries are the 3 countries that are currently buying those carbon credits. Pretty much no one else is, because it's too expensive. So let's say it's a 600 euro process to capture euro or dollar, okay? I'm always between euro and American dollar. To capture a ton of CO2, that's 600. To buy a carbon credit, at least to avoid the tax at 60 euros, only when the tax is higher. So at the economic level, only 3 countries in the world are actually actively buying carbon credits. That means that absolutely everyone else on the planet is not buying carbon credits. So basically, buying a carbon credit really demonstrates that you have captured carbon or participated to the sequestration of carbon to the point that you really compensate for your emissions. So if only 3 countries do it, and very rarely other businesses will do it, of course, but they know that they're paying 3, 4, 5 times what they would have to pay in tax and just get the government off their back. Do you think that Ukraine currently can pay a carbon tax or carbon credit? Ukraine has €1 per ton of carbon tax. And I don't think in their current situation, they're going to be too hard on their industries to pay that tax of €1 per ton they emit, because they're going through a war. There's always a local economy situation that affects the capacity of the people to pay those taxes or to operate. And the 3 countries that are currently buying the carbon credits because their tax is higher than their access to the carbon credit, some of them do it, okay, but there's just a few, but they do migrate their industries to other countries with no tax. So let's say an English or a Swedish company would start to manufacture their products in other countries, in Pakistan and India or whatnot, and because there's no carbon tax or there's no regulation, there's no impact on them. So you have the product in your country, but no taxes were paid. Okay, so the carbon tax and carbon credit is necessary to put a bit of pressure on the industry, but it only, basically the formula, most countries don't even have them. Very few countries purchase actual carbon credit. All the countries that pay a tax, the tax is not enough to actually capture carbon. If an industry emits carbon, 1 ton, and it costs €600 to capture and sequester it, giving 15 or 20 or 35 euros to your government will not allow them to capture that ton because it costs 5, 10 times more. It's sometimes 20 times more. It's just way too more expensive. So let's stop dreaming that carbon taxes and carbon credits is going to save us, because it's not going to save us. Okay, it is a movement forward. But currently, through my napkin calculation of, I did it on a computer, but figure of speech, my off the top calculation is that we're at 3% efficiency of the intended solution of the carbon tax and carbon credit. So, yeah, it doesn't really work. It's a minor dent in the huge problem. But let's remember, there is hope. We got solution. They work. It's just that if government and corporation won't finance it, let's just finance it ourselves. Yeah, it's going to work. We're good. Let's do it.